On today's Tech Help for Churches, Google Analytics. Welcome everyone to another Tech Help for Churches. I, of course, am your host, Paul Allen Clifford. You can interact with me by dropping me a line, paul@trinitydigitalmedia.com, or drop me a voicemail, 1-877-763-3246. That's also 1-877-POD-ECHO if you want to echo back to this podcast. Speaking of podcasts, this isn't the only podcast that I do. In addition to putting the video up on YouTube, I also do, I have the audio sent out in podcast form. You can find that on iTunes, or if you go to trinitydigitalmedia.com/THFC, short for Tech Help for Churches, you can find all the information there. I also do Technobabble, which is actually my oldest podcast, starting way back in July of 2005, on and off, but it's been going strong again, reliably, since May, actually. As well as my newest podcast, which is the audio from the Eternity Changers series. Now, I've got Creating Church also in the works. That's going to be basically a class, but I record all the video segments for that class every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. Just as I'm recording this live on Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific on churchtechcast.com, or I guess you could go to Trinity Digital /live if you preferred. So let's get started talking about Google Analytics. First, you might be curious what Google Analytics is. Google Analytics is a statistics package that enables you to find out all sorts of information that you couldn't necessarily just find out other ways on your website. Basically what you do is you copy a piece of code, you put it in the header of your page for your website, and then it reports all sorts of interesting information to Google. So I've got a Google Analytics page open, and first off, I've got 3 pages that are listed. One that podcastingchurchright.com right now isn't pointed to anything, so I'm getting no visits there. I need to correct that. Another is a client site, and I have reports automatically sent to the pastor of that church so that they can see what they're getting, who they're getting information from, etc. And finally, it's trinitydigitalmedia.com, my primary site. So I'm going to click on that and tell you some of the information that I'm getting from Google Analytics and some useful things that I've found to do with it. Now, when you first bring that up, you get a nice line graph of your traffic from day to day. So mine fluctuates. Sometimes I'll have really low traffic, like 20 some odd visitors. Sometimes I'll have really high traffic. For me, high traffic is a couple hundred visitors, and it goes back and forth between kind of those figures. The weekends tend to be shorter, lower for me, probably because most of you guys are in church or you're preparing for church or whatever, so you're not visiting, learning about it. But during the week, you're probably going, oh, well, what's Paul up to today? So that's why it spikes up there. So, for example, in the past month, I've had 1,216 visits. 946 of those are unique visits. So, on average, that's 1.6 pages per visit. Total of 2,023 page views. Average duration, 1 minute 54 seconds. And bounce rate, percentage of new visitors, all that stuff. So that each of those bits of information tells me something about my website, and it helps me. Another important thing here is I've got language. So if you were to find that your church's website was getting a large number of views from people that speak Spanish, for example, then perhaps you would want to include some content specifically for those people. In my case, it's 0.5% approximately of people speak Spanish, so it's less of an issue for me personally, which I'm happy about because I don't personally speak Spanish. My wife speaks a little, my oldest daughter speaks a little. I actually speak French, which is 1%. So I could do something there if I wanted to. So basically, I see that I've got 1,095 visitors who use U.S. English, 44 that speak it doesn't say what kind of English, so it could be they also speak English, but from a different country or different dialect, which is fine. So that tells me something about my visitors. Also, I can see the browser that they used. So if I click on under System, there is a browser. Most of my users use Chrome. The next is Safari, followed by Safari in-app. So that is either Safari for iOS or Safari inside of an application in iOS, or Safari for Mac OS X, followed by Firefox. Towards the bottom I have Internet Explorer, followed by the Android browser, then Opera, Opera Mini, BlackBerry, and NetFront. And I'm not sure what NetFront is, but only 2 people use it, so I'm not as concerned about it. Now this could be helpful as I'm doing design. If I think, okay, do I have to go through all the trouble to tweak my design so that it's okay for Internet Explorer? Well, am I okay with 86 of my visitors every month not getting an optimal experience? If so, then I don't. So that's important information as well. It tells me the operating system. Now you might hear that Macintosh is 5% of the desktop operating system charts. Well, that might be true in the world, but on my site, it's about 50-50. I have 31.58% are Windows, 30.26% are Mac, and from there on, the next one is iOS. So actually, my largest percentage of visitors, if I combine the iOS and the Windows visitor, or the Macintosh visitors, I've got 82% of my visitors are looking at it on something made by Apple. So that's important for me to know. Now, it could be that that's atypical because I do talk a lot about Apple stuff because I like Apple stuff. But it is a piece of important information. Now, let me tell you a little bit about first off, I'm noticing that I'm getting a lot of mobile visitors. So that is something that you should be looking at your church. If your site is not optimized for mobile friendly viewing, it could be that you're missing out on a lot. In my case, I'm getting 323 visits per month on iOS, just iOS. Now you might think, well, there's so many Android phones, surely you're getting a lot of those. 95. That's how many I'm getting. Again, It could be that I skew myself towards Macintosh, and that's why my percentages are low. But it could just be that there are a lot of people that have Android phones that aren't as interested in tech. They just wanted a smartphone, and that was the choice that made the most sense to them, not from a, well, I like to get into the code or I like to tweak settings sort of way, but from a, oh, I like the price on that, or I like the size of that screen, or something where they're not as technologically driven. It's more, there was some other feature that they liked. Could even be just color. That's at least what my site is telling me among my audience. Now there's another tab here called traffic sources, and this tells you where you're getting traffic from, as well as basically where you're getting it from. So I notice that I'm getting so basically the keywords that I'm ranking for are Applebox DIY. You might recall a couple of weeks ago I did something talking about apple boxes. Here I am patting an apple box like you can see it. It's right over here. I've got 4 that have something to do with apple boxes. One that, a couple of visitors where they just searched for trinitydigitalmedia.com. Guess they were on the Google site already. Then I've got ProPresenter tutorials, secular worship song, broadcast television, copyright church, cheap wireless transmitter and receiver, DSLR, church sound guide. Those are kind of my top keywords. And then there's higher than that are not provided. So that really doesn't help me. Sources, referral traffic. Actually, let me go to sources of search engine traffic. 97.62% of my searches are coming from Google. I know that Google doesn't have that much percentage of use, but among my audience, it's overwhelmingly Google. So I'm going to want to put most of my effort towards Google. Second at 1.43% is Bing. So I might occasionally think about them. DuckDuckGo, not listed. Any other, Yahoo, not listed. Although Yahoo might be included in Bing, since they use Bing search engines. Third, at less than 1%, is Yandex. So you can see how, for your church, if you've got this information, you can go, okay, when I'm doing SEO, Bing, because Bing really isn't bringing in any information to me. They're not bringing in people. Now, it could be in your church it's reversed, but in my site, that's the decision that I'm making based on what I'm seeing. Let's see what else I have. Landing page. Landing page is really important to me because that tells me what page people are starting out at. You would think that it would be your index page, and in my case, 23% of the time that's the case. Almost 24% of the time. But that leaves 76% of the time people are landing on other pages. So the next most popular one is the live page, which you can get to from churchtechcast.com. So that doesn't surprise me. I'm really promoting that like crazy. The third one, though, surprises me. The third one is a page called SEMPEI13. That page does not exist. In fact, I don't know where that link is coming from. So, there are 21 visitors per month that are landing on a 404 page. Because I looked it up just to see what that took you to, and there's no content there. So, what I did is I set up a redirect so that it redirects to my homepage. And I found that way I'm at least capturing the visitors, that they can at least see something. And that's kind of valuable information. You know where people are landing, and you can, given that information, you can redirect them if they're landing on page not found kind of pages, and you can help them. So that's actually something that I've done recently in the last 2 or 3 days, is set up redirects for each of these dead links that I'm sure at one time led to something, but I can't remember what it led to. Now the /Simpy13 one probably was my author page at one time, because that is a login that I have used in the past. So I would bet that that's what that is it's a redirect to my author page. But now I've been able to fix that so that they'll be able to find content helpful to my audience, helpful to me. So that's really just touching the surface of what can do. I don't want to get into it so heavily that it gets boring, but I do want to just mention a few of these things that it can do. I actually don't even understand everything that it can do, and that's okay, because I haven't implemented all the changes I can make. Now, if I make every possible change I can, and I implement every possible change I can, and then I still don't understand some stuff, then it's time to do some research. So one thing that I am noticing is if I go to, what was it? Sources, I believe. No, traffic sources, overview. So I mentioned the keyword. I'm seeing a couple of keywords that people are getting to my site from that are just, they're incidental to what I do. I mentioned them in an article to help you guys, but it's not that I'm the Apple Box site for the entire net, but yet those are two of my top keywords. I've seen this before. I did a review back at the beginning of the year for one of these guys, which is a wireless hotspot, and I was talking about using that instead of telephone service, kind of doing voice over IP, and I found that there were some pluses and some minuses, and I got a lot of traffic, and that was just an incidental, hey, this is something techy that I've been experimenting with kind of posts. So that's interesting. It's also interesting to me that ProPresenter tutorials and secular worship songs, which are more core to my audience, are about halfway down the list. So I can do more work on those to make them rise up. I can also broadcast television copyright church is another one. I can do more work on that. Highlight other posts with those keywords, things like that, just to drive more of my core audience there and lower my bounce rate, which is the rate of people that show up and go, nope, this isn't what I want, and leave. Or perhaps they find exactly what they want and then they leave. Either way, the results. So I hope that all of these pieces of information, all of the little minutia of who's visiting your site, that's all stuff that can help you. I really think that if you pay attention to it, you can really engage all the people. Because remember, eyeballs, visitors, those are really just people. And so people that are coming to your site, think of engaging the people, because that's how you change eternity. Till next time, when we'll be talking about reading HTML, don't worry, it's not as scary as it sounds. Next week on Tech Help for Churches. Until then, have a great week.